जी आया ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਸਾਂਝੀ ਸੋਚ ਟੀਵੀ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਇੰਦਰਜੀਤ ਕਾਲੀਰਾਏ ਆਪਣੇ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਨਵੰਬਰ 5 ਨੂੰ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਔਰ ਲੋਕਲ ਅਸੈਂਬਲੀਜ਼ ਵੀ ਲੋਕਲ ਸੈਨੇਟ ਔਰ ਕਾਉਂਟੀ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇਤਾ ਚੋਣ ਚ ਖੜੇ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਰੀ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਲਈ ਖੜੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰੀਦੀ ਹੈ ਅੱਜ ਆਪਣੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਵਨ ਅਸੈਂਬਲੀ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ District 23 there. Welcome to Ajkal America One. I just gave a brief description of you running in a re-election. I'd like you to give us a brief introduction to your district and you're running for re-election and what can we expect and what have we seen as work you've provided for the district, and then we'll talk about the rest of the stuff.
Yes, of course. So Assembly District 22 is actually a brand new district that was made after the census. So every 10 years when the census has gone through its process of counting and making sure that representation is done, sometimes new districts are drawn. And so I now have a district that was shared by Assemblymember Heath Floor and Assemblymember Adam Gray at one point. And so it consumes half of Stanislaus and a northern sliver of Merced County. For as far as the big cities go, you have all of Modesto, Ceres, Turlock, Patterson. You also have Hillmar, Gustine, Newman, Empire, smaller communities as well, like Wesley and Crow's Landing, Diablo Grande, Newman and Gustine, if I haven't said them already. But as far as our year, I would say we're very, as far as our district and what we've done up in Sacramento, we've been very busy. We were actually able to get 16 bills signed by the governor this term, which is a pretty good feat for especially a first-term assembly member. I think I ranked number 4 as far as getting the most bills to the governor. But it's not all about the numbers. It's just making sure that they're quality bills. As you may know, I'm a retired sergeant from the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Department, and public safety is a big thing for me. And I wanted to make sure that I could fix what's going on with public safety that I saw when I was a law enforcement officer. So a lot of my bills have to do with public safety. Also agriculture is a big thing in Stanislaus County and Merced County, Central Valley, San Joaquin Valley. So I want to make sure that I also take care of our farmers who obviously are putting food on the table for people, even though they may think it just shows up in the grocery store.
Definitely. To begin with, you mentioned you're an ex-law enforcement officer, and some of your bills that you presented in the previous term are related to public safety. What we've seen a lot of in the past few months is challenges that have been brought about, and the solution to which has been presented as Prop 36, and how it can fix the problems that we have in our cities, the retail theft being one of the big issues that we've had. As a law enforcement officer and an assembly member, what do you see the benefits of Prop 36 or the opposite of it? What do you see as a solution moving forward, fixing crime on the streets? Many of us are dealing with some of the small businesses in your district, convenience stores, gas stations. We had a situation not too long ago in Stockton where 7-Eleven was basically red-handedly caught the individual, and there was all this concern about who's going to be tried for whatever happened that day. Is it going to be the person who came in to steal the goods from the 7-Eleven, or is it going to be the 7-Eleven owners who basically took action and tried to stop the crime in process? From a position as a legislator and previously a law enforcement officer, how do you see helping small business owners and also residents and people who shop at these small businesses, even at the malls, keeping them safe from gang store raids that happen, and they're sort of just we've heard the stories in San Francisco places. So overall, how do you see your bills, Prop 36, and anything in the future working to keep the public and their businesses safe?
Yes, and that's a great question, and that should be on everybody's mind because that affects everyone, no matter if you're a small business owner or even a customer patronizing a business. Uh, Obviously, my background, I felt that it was my job to make sure that I educate the other 79 legislators in the assembly because I became the vice chair of public safety, and I found that the committee members who you would think would know a lot about public safety and the way that law enforcement and prosecutors work would be part of their knowledge they would have going into it. But I found that that was not true, and so I was constantly trying to educate the committee as soon as I got there, and also the legislation. I saw too much that we, as a body up there, and there's a majority party up there, that care more about the person who did the offense or made the choice to make that crime as opposed to the victims. For over 10 years, our small businesses have been having to try so many different ways to help protect their stores, which is their livelihood, which is most likely what they're going to plan on passing down to their kids for generations and generations. And they're just victimized without anybody there to help them. So Prop 47 was passed 10 years ago. We were told it was safe schools, safe neighborhoods. Had nothing to do with that. That's where our retail theft problem came. And I was a law enforcement officer, and I got to see it years before Prop 47 and after. It failed. So what we were doing was basically allowing people who were hooked on drugs or were involved with criminal activity the ability to steal even more from our businesses and not get in trouble. So you mentioned Prop 36. Prop 36, I'm actually one of the co-chairs for Prop 36. I'm very supportive of it, and I really want people to vote yes on it. I usually don't support propositions, but this is a big one. This one will pretty much, not completely, but it will help fix part of what happened with Prop 47. Prop 47, we went to the extreme side to make sure that prisons weren't overcrowded and that people weren't treated unfairly. And obviously, we are here with our problem now. As you can see, big stores are moving out of the Bay Area. They're not coming back. Our small businesses are shutting down because they can't afford to stay open because of all the loss, or they have to do things online because now people are shopping behind plexiglass, which doesn't work for people either. And what people also need to understand is that's also somebody's job that they maybe needed to make sure that they could live, like they can buy food, that they could pay for a mortgage or an apartment, rent. And those jobs were lost too when we start to lean more towards criminal activity as opposed to victims. I was the only Republican on the Speaker's retail theft package of 10 bills that the legislation put together, that the governor signed. And that was the legislation's way of saying, you know what, enough's enough. We're going to help you. And this is the bill package they put together to help prosecutors, law enforcement, and especially small businesses know that, hey, we're here finally coming to help. So that's one piece of the pie. The other piece is this Prop 36. People need to vote on it. I think the people of California need to have, I guess you can say, like their day in court where they get to have their say, where they get to see that, you know what, that didn't work. Let's fix this. Let's go back to the drawing board and slowly see what we can do to help. Because I don't want to throw everybody in jail or prison. People can be rehabilitated, but people don't volunteer to go to drug rehab. That's usually how it happened, is they would get arrested. They would get arrested and then get the help that they needed. That tool is no longer available for law enforcement. So now what do we see? Homelessness growing, mental health growing, and obviously retail theft growing as much as it is now. And I blame it all on Prop 47. So please vote yes on Prop 36.
Well, thank you on that one. And just as a side, I agree with you, and I personally am yes on 36, and I hope everybody listening will be yes on 36. One of the things that's being talked about with this retail crime and the repetitive crime was, if I, using my example as me, if I go down to the local mall and go into Macy's, pick up some items, and I make sure they're under the 950 limit, I'm not going to see one of your buddies pick me up and take me in. Or if they do, I'll be back home by the evening. But if I go and do that again tomorrow, It's a fresh, clean slate. What I did yesterday doesn't count. So I'm assuming, and this is just from what I've heard, Prop 36 does fix that. So repeat crime, repeat offenses will be considered. But the $950 limit, that seems weird to me, only because I'm back in England and I'm visiting with family. And the family who watched over me when I was a little kid, they used to tell me if I stole a spoon today and they didn't beat the crap out of me, I'd be stealing a ladle tomorrow and the pot the day after. So their solution was fix it, nip it in the bud when it's still small. So I got crap beat out of me for picking up that spoon. I never volunteered to pick up the ladle. Simple thing is, you go down to the store, corner convenience store, whatever, you pick up a Snickers bar. Not only were we scared of our family, we were scared of Mrs. Smith living up the street, giving us the bad eye for doing what we shouldn't have done. When somebody's look was enough of a deterrent in our young days, it doesn't seem to be the same these days. And the deterrence with people like your previous profession of law enforcement, when they don't have the ability to slap somebody on the wrist for doing something like a Snickers bar, then they can't do anything when it's a couple of $100 or driving from the gas station after filling your tank up. We have this continuous problem. What could the legislature do to take this magic number 950 and make it more reasonable? That I'm not trying to bring religion into this, but one of the commandments is thou shalt not steal. So,
Yes.
not to talk about religion, not to bring that in, but isn't that a basic human principle that what I have is mine, what you have is yours? I may borrow from you, you may give to me, but for me to put my hand in your pocket and take it away from you, that is not right, no matter which book you look at. So, what can the legislature do to actually bring common sense into some of these crime issues that we're facing with, punish people accordingly, make a deterrent the punishment that prevents. I'm looking at not people of my generation, but today's young kids going to kindergarten, going to a junior, middle, high schools. If we can deter them from picking up these habits, I think we will go a long way in fixing society down the road. So, as a legislative member, is there anything we can do to start educating our kids that crime doesn't pay?
I think we can. I'm a big fan of teaching kids young, youth programs and all. I would go to calls sometimes and parents would ask me to try and basically scold their 16, 17, 18-year-olds because they weren't listening to mommy and daddy. And I'm like, well, this is a problem that you've had maybe since they were probably 1 or 2 years old that you should have fixed, or else you'd never be where you are today. We have a generation now where they're mostly raised by their phones. They're smartphones. The
Mm-hmm.
parents hand them the smartphones and they learn off the smartphones now, and that's where they're going now. And so I think that's something else that needs to be addressed. And I know we've had some bills that are cutting down on that also, especially in schools. But as far as the $950 goes, I was also on the retail theft select committee, and the opposition kept bringing up that other states have higher limits than $950. And why are we making it such a big deal? Well, they use Texas. Texas is like a over $2,000 limit. And what they failed to mention is that in Texas, they have laws that are much more stricter. So the deterrent, as you mentioned earlier, is a big deal, is a big thing there. And so that's why they don't have as much as theft goes. I try and preach about deterrent, especially crimes. If you look at the history of crimes, some countries you may have a hand cut off, or you may have a finger cut off, or some kind of lashings from back in the day, because they knew that if I can make sure that the punishment was worse than what you were gaining from whatever crime you were doing, then it would stop them from wanting to do it. Unfortunately, California has done just the opposite. We are telling people that it's okay to steal, that it's okay to take that. You know what? You probably deserve that as much as the person who owned it or tried to sell it is supposed to have it. And that's what our legislation is leaning towards more now. Obviously, there's a supermajority in Sacramento. There's not a balance. And when there's not a balance in Sacramento, then you have it to where, you know, they don't really need to be put in check too much and are allowed to do what they can because they can do it. We're doing a special session right now with the governor over gas, and we've brought up some very good points that you would think that if it was such an urgency of a bill for us to go back to Sacramento to vote on this, that they would look at what we brought up and honestly maybe hopefully vote on it, which would be to cut some of the red tape for these refineries to be able to have more storage tanks or more pipelines, just like we allowed to cut the red tape for our capital. We're adding on to the capital right now, and we felt that it was okay to go ahead and cut the red tape. Let's just get it built. We did that with also a sports center also in Sacramento, but God forbid we do it for the refineries if it's really that important to make sure that we cut prices at the gas pumps. So to answer your question,
Exactly.
what can legislation do? What they can do is they can get more strict. They can listen more to their constituents. Hopefully, I'm hoping their constituents are reaching out to them because they're being told, they're telling me just the opposite, which I disagree with. And they think that it's okay. But I think I did notice this once we came back from our December break, a lot of retail theft bills were being introduced by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. So somebody must have said something at some point to tell them, like, hey, maybe you should listen to these guys. They kind of know what they're talking about. And I don't care who gets the credit. I don't care who gets the bill through. As long as California, our small businesses, our customers, our victims aren't victimized anymore and they get to benefit from it.
Totally understand and totally agree with you. Moving from the crime issues, and so hopefully Prop 36 will get through and will alleviate some of the challenge that we currently face. We brought up in our previous discussion education and how we can use the process of educating kids into being good citizens, and good citizens in every way in terms of living in the society that we have. California, we have one of the richest, diversest communities as the whole state of California is. We're very diverse. We're very flexible, and in reality, we reflect the rest of the world. So if we went from one corner of California to another, we would see literally everything that we see in the rest of the world. Having that in hand and having that richness, it requires us to be collaborative. It requires us to partner with each other and look at a lot of the society infrastructure that we're building, and teaching our kids to be as flexible and as tolerant and as accommodating of other people's cultures and everything else is one of the things that we can do. But crime is a common factor for all our communities. And no matter which community we talk to or which community we may be part of, we all want to deter crime. So hopefully we can deal with that. But the other piece comes down to education and academic performance. We were at one point in time the land of dreams, and California was, the golden state. It doesn't seem to be that. We've lost a congressional seat because obviously the numbers speak louder than words. We've lost population. How do we maintain California to be the shining star that a couple of decades it was? I mean, I came to California for that dream opportunity, and it can be a dream for the rest of us. But more than people coming into California, we need to make it a dream opportunity for our future generations. We don't need a situation where our future generations are looking where else to go when they really should be meeting their dreams and their aspirations in our state. So, what could the legislature do in the terms ahead of us to make California not only retain and rebuild, but keep being number one?
Well, there are so many fronts that I have seen up in Sacramento in my 2 years up there that legislators have found ways to regulate so much to where people leave California. Let's just take the dairy industry, for example. California doesn't want them here. And I just say that as the majority as the supermajority doesn't. And so they're finding ways to overregulate them and make it easier for them to move out of state. And so now what's happening is those dairies that moved out of state, they're now bringing their product back and they're able to sell it cheaper than those that stayed here. So now I have the dairymen in California that are upset that, hey, my old neighbor that used to be here is out of state now is able to sell it cheaper milk, and now I'm losing out. So that's not working. The other thing is with education. Like I said, I'm big with youth programs. I used to be a school resource officer. I used to be part of DARE. Excuse me. I believe in like Boy Scout programs. Both of my boys are Eagle Scouts, so I'm really big on youth programs, building for our future. What we are doing is, unfortunately, is we're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on programs, especially with the homelessness, those that are unhoused and unchecked. I have no problem helping them, but we're just throwing money at agencies where we're not even finding out what kind of results we are getting. We need to treat this as a business in some sense, to where, am I getting anything out that I'm giving in? And if I'm not, cut that program. Hey, and then let's invest in youth programs. Let's invest in our future. These adults, hey, they've had times to make their decisions. And at some point we need to say, you know what, when do we stop, take a time out, and then reinvest in our youth? Because right now we're just chasing our tails and we're not getting anywhere on that. Another thing with schools, local control. School boards, they're elected for a reason. Let them do their jobs. I see so many times that the state thinks that they know better than the board members or that area of California what's better for them. Los Angeles is very heavily represented in the assembly. They have a huge population. And so I normally find that whatever problems are going on in Los Angeles are now being imposed on my district or districts here in the valley, where we aren't doing the stuff that they're doing. We're actually doing the right thing. And you need to fix your problem and not make it our problem with this one size fits all. And that's what they do up there. So local control with the school boards, let them run how they do their educating. Our education, as far as us in ranking, is terrible. As you mentioned, our fourth, fifth economy as far as being the largest in the world, and yet our education system is terrible. I think that has to go a lot to that. And then again, with the youth, parents probably need some help with that. Again, there's a little disconnect in the generations, and I think a lot of that also had to do with some parents didn't want their kids to grow up like they did. So they thought they were doing them a favor, but not letting them have to go through the trials and errors that we had to go through, which made us the people who we are today. You know what? I had to work hard and do this, so I'm going to make sure my kid doesn't have to do that, because that was really hard. But come to find out, that is what made me who I am. And so now our new generation aren't seeing that, didn't even know that they could be teaching that. And so now we have this gap that's happening. And it's going on even in sports, as you may know, like getting a participation medal. Well, no, this is when you teach them that you're not always going to win. And if you don't, what that makes you do is it makes you work harder to be that person that you want to be. But we're not getting that on the overall picture. I hope that helped a little bit.
It definitely did. And you opened the door for one other thing I want to talk about on education is sports. Over the last few months, we've had a lot of discussion on sports and women's sports in particular. Over the Olympics, we had a situation where the boxing tournaments in the Olympics were participated by what many people will say not biological women or transgender members of our community. Not trying to be reflective or prejudicial in any way, because in society, we're all God's creations. Whether we want to bring faith into this or not, we're all created equal according to our Constitution. But when we're talking about women's rights, and I'll take it to the other side, when we're talking about defending women's rights to choose, then why can we not defend the woman's right to compete in sports fairly? And not to again go off on a tangent on a political ideology, but when we have a Supreme Court justice who says she cannot define a woman because she's not a biologist, we have a problem. But leaving that aside, that's just a punchline I wanted to throw in there. But how does the legislature accommodate keeping sports fair without making it challenging more than necessary for women? Because a lot of science says that a transgender male, female does not have the same physio strength as a biological woman. And I'm not advocating personally that we should make them play in men's sports, but is there some way that California could take a lead and create a third league that if you're going to be a transgender individual, there's a league for transgenders, but leave women's sports for women and men's sports for men and let this third league come up? Is there a way, or is that even feasible?
I think it is feasible. If you think about it, we have Special Olympics, right? They have their own Olympics because of the same reasons you brought up, to make sure that they're competing at the same level or the same fairness. Something that we also overlook, even though people say, "Oh, you don't care about transgenders if you don't let them fight with a woman or wrestle with a woman." You also have to remember, I have to care and think about the safety of the woman. She could be hurt badly, and some of
Exactly.
them were hurt badly. Some of them said
Yes.
that they've never been hit that hard because they've never fought a man before. And there's a reason that we have them separated like that. And so, yes, I think having a third option for others that don't classify into both, again, I think a safety reason needs to be the biggest concern that we go over, because it's not fair for the woman who's been training for 4 years to compete against another woman who's of the same stature, and then come to find out that she's going to go against a guy that decided that he was a woman yesterday. It's not fair to them, and then they can get hurt. I as a father, if one of my kids was going against a really big guy that says that he's a woman now against my daughter who's a smaller woman, uh, I don't see how I could allow that to happen, because that's not fair. Even though people will come out and say, they have rights, they have rights, they have rights. Well, she has a right too to feel safe. She has a right to also, if she wants to wrestle or fight or box women as well. But I think opening a separate class, just like we do with Special Olympics, allow that to be a thing as well.
Is it something the legislature could take up and put California in a position where they do that?
I don't.
At least, I'm sorry for interrupting. I'm looking at it from a couple of girls' basketball teams, other teams that have decided not to take part in a game where the other opposing team has put in a transgender player. So they forfeit the game and the whole team loses out. I don't think that's fair either. So somehow I believe it's a legislative issue where the legislator is going to have to come in and stipulate what is legally going to be acceptable in California. So that's where I'm approaching this from.
And I get that. I obviously, state legislation can only deal with state issues, so I could see like local high schools and stuff like that, I think would be the thing. But then that also would go down to local control. I would almost think it would have to be a congressional issue at that level with the federal level. I'm on the Olympics Select Committee. I don't know what we're going to cover because we haven't met on it yet, because, well, the Olympics may be only a couple years away, but that I'm definitely going to be asking about. I think though that I think we can help encourage others to maybe look into a different separate league as well. Again, safety reasons. That's more than enough that anybody should need to help protect our athletes while they're trying to compete in something that they've been wanting to do their whole life. It's not fair to them, as you mentioned. It's not fair to those basketball teams that as a team they decided to forfeit. But that, I think, says in itself a big statement that, enough's enough. We've been training, practicing, working together as a team to compete against those that are like us, and they're not going to go for it again.
I accept that and I understand that. So, but I'd like to take the opportunity for taking a break now and come back and talk about other local California issues that are more relevant to your district too. So, small break. जी हैं तुसी देख रहे हो अजकल अमेरिका मैं इंद्रजीत कालीराय अपने ब्रेक का मौका हो रहा अपने असैम्बलीमैन हैगे ने डिस्ट्रिक्ट 22 तो जिहदे नाल अपनी गलबात हुई है ब्रेक दी इजाजत दे वो मिलदे ब्रेक के बाद. We talked about sports, we've talked about crime, we've covered some of the education issues, but you're in an agricultural district. And one of the things that's very critical to California and the farmers in your district, farmers throughout California, is water. In the last few
Water.
years, we've had plenty of water come through the clouds, and we've had fair amount of snow that's been stored in the hills. But for some reason, we're always threatened with a drought. And there's always talk about water being into the ocean, just rushing the rivers through there. Not trying to be negative on that, but there are certain state programs legislatively mandated for wildlife protection, fish, wildlife, and all the other environmental issues. In order to prepare for the future and keep our farmers productive, because when you drive down Highway 5 or 99, you'll see these signs, food grows where water flows. How can we keep California agriculturally arable and green and producing the foods, the fruits, the wine grapes, the raisin grapes, and everything else, almonds, and you name it, we grow it, literally. How can we keep that as an active economic component of our economy? It's pretty large right now. It used to be large, but we need to do something to help these farmers keeping agriculture alive in California. And one of those issues is water. How do we maintain water for these farmers?
Well, first off, I would say, how do we keep the water? Well, we find ways to hold the water. We've approved dams a long time ago that have not been built yet. The last dam that we had was New Melones, I believe, in 1972. Our population has almost tripled since then, yet we still have the same water capacity that we had back then. And so, yeah, we're struggling. We watched 2, maybe 3 storms just clear out everything that we could have filled every one of those dams if they were built. That would have definitely helped us through any droughts. Would have helped us with water recharge into the ground. You know, people don't realize that there's also rivers underneath us, and refilling them also, so these pumps and wells could be pulling from them, would also help. I think another big thing, again, this is a big state, and we think one size fits all. Well, we have our state water project where a lot of the water from Northern California goes down to Southern California because they have a population that needs to have water. I've taken some tours down there, and I think one of our biggest problems is holding them accountable as well, giving them the strict water days that we have now and have had early on. You know, we have water days, yet you go down to Los Angeles and stuff, and you see them watering their yard. It's all green. And it's like, how is this possible? I thought we were helping conserve our water so we can make sure they're okay. Well, we did. They're really okay. So what they also do is they take the water from the Colorado River. And I went to a tour where we were talking about the water and how they blend both the State Water Project and the Colorado River to provide for the greater LA area. But they also had a water recycling center where they were making billions of gallons that they were able to give back to the Los Angeles area. And so my concern was, well, if you're making all this extra water now, do you really need to grab as much as you can from Northern California to where we can give it to ag and make sure that they're able to grow what they need to grow? And I was met head on with a big no, 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 no. Then my thing was, okay, well, who helped pay for this recycling center? Well, they're like, we get it from Sacramento, grants, stuff like that. So then it made me even more frustrated to know that we, as Northern California, flipped at least half the bill for them to have something that we don't get to enjoy. So that gets very frustrating. But I also sit on, besides being the vice chair of ag, I also sit on our water, wildlife, and parks. So water is always a big struggle. I've seen people from Southern California tell people in my district, I have Turlock Irrigation District and I have Modesto Irrigation District. They have the most senior water rights here in California. And I have seen them have to go up there and testify to compete against people in Southern California that say it is not fair that just because they came here first that they get to have the water. Well, I think it is very fair. And they haven't just been taking over the water. They've been very good stewards of the water, to the point to where other irrigation districts come to my district to see how we run things, how we do things. It also helps to have a board that's elected. That's a big problem that we also have if you want to talk about power companies. MID and Turlock Irrigation District, well, Modesto Irrigation District, they provide power as well. And so you have that with good rates because they're elected, they're held accountable. We have these other big agencies, they're not elected. Excuse me, they're not elected and they're not held accountable. So that's why you see a lot of rates going up and up and up.
Well, thank you on that one. We've covered agriculture. We've covered a lot of the law enforcement issues, the crime that's impacting California. We've covered education. And the other piece comes to, you mentioned homeless. Where does it come in that sort of our seniors are not going to suffer as we move forward in the economy and everything else, and our veteran services? So services for our seniors, making sure that they're able to get all the services they need, the healthcare. And the other thing is, if a veteran served our nation, we should be taking care of them. And part of this comes to the issue where sort of we're giving legal services, we're giving healthcare services for people who we classify as undocumented. I myself am an immigrant. I came over here 35 years ago. I came through the front door. So I call it coming through the front door, the back door. And I have worked in California. I got some of the benefits. I've had healthcare through my employment. And as a retiree, I expect to maintain that. But there are seniors and veterans who need those services. And for some reason, it seems like the people in Sacramento under the White Dome are not really giving them the preferences that they need. They're spending the state dollars on programs that not necessarily help the citizens who built California.
Yes, and
So
like I mentioned earlier, we try and audit and make sure that those agencies are held accountable. What kind of results are you guys producing? You obviously have no problem taking the money, like millions and millions and millions, where we could have used that for our seniors and our veterans. I have a very high population of veterans in my district. We have a veterans group that we meet with to make sure that we know what's going on and what's up and coming. As you may know, usually veterans fall under the federal umbrella, but we work really well with our congressmen, McClintock and Duarte. And so I'm very proud that our teams work together to also address those issues that maybe I can't necessarily do, but I can have them help with the issue. Things like Prop 13 from back in the day are still constantly, as you may know, being attacked. And those are some ways that we make sure the stability still stays the way it is. Our elderly population are on fixed incomes. And now we've seen fast food get a hike of $20. We've seen medical minimum wage get a hike of $25, and that affects them. We had franchises from McDonald's, Taco Bell, everywhere, coming up to Sacramento for 2 weeks, asking us, pleading with us not to vote on this minimum wage because they knew that it was going to hurt the economy. It was going to hurt everybody, especially those on fixed incomes. But yet it happened anyways. And now I know there was just an article done where like 4,600 jobs between the years of 18 and 21 years old they've lost those jobs because fast food is now either cutting back hours or they're combining positions to where they are cutting down on the amount of people they employ. Same thing's going on with the agricultural area, which, like we mentioned, I'm the vice chair of ag. I'm also on labor, where we have talked about where my colleagues thinks it's a good idea to make sure that everybody gets overtime. And I think everybody should be treated equally. But what they don't understand is in ag, we have a thing called harvest. That's 3 or 4 months, as you may know. And that's the time to hurry up and get this all done. And I have families who are just waiting for harvest because that's usually where they make most of their money. But now we in the legislation have limited their hours, where if they work after a certain amount, it becomes overtime. Well, for their employer, they can't afford that overtime. And so what do? They hire somebody else to come in and finish the rest of those hours, essentially making those families that were hoping and banking on having that harvest to help carry them through the year not be possible anymore. So I have a lot of immigrants, especially, coming to my office saying, hey, we're not getting the same paycheck we used to get. How do you expect me to pay my bills? So the affordability issue becomes a thing, but that becomes something, again, that those in the White Dome, as you mentioned, are regulating or legislating and doing what they think is right, but not actually getting boots on the ground to find out how it's going to affect. That unintended consequence that we normally hear about is a big thing. So I could talk forever about that, but if you want me to talk something specific, I will.
Definitely. But right now, considering the time that we had available, what I want to do is give you the opportunity to give your contact, give your information for anybody who wants to reach out to you, get contact with your staff members, put up your sign in their yard. However, I mean, I personally wish you the best, and I hope you're back in Sacramento come November. But just to share your information with everybody else, the farmers, and there's a lot of South Asian farmers in your district. So for them to be able to reach out to you, other members of the community to hear you and reach out and make contact with you, help you, the floor is yours. How do we reach you?
Well, thank you. Well, one of the things, I'm a big believer in going to the people. I have mobile district offices in our smaller communities like Keys, Empire, uh, Newman, Gustine, to where I don't expect somebody to have to drive all the way to Modesto at my main office at 1010 10th Street on the 5th floor, because they have to work. They have to go, do what they have to do. Sometimes people don't want to make a phone call. Sometimes they don't want to email. They want to see somebody in person. I'm a big face-to-face person as well. So I don't blame them for that. So that's why we were reaching out, and that's why we've done that for the past 2 years, to where we go out and reach out. And my staff is excellent. They care about their community. They live in the community they work in. And so that makes it even easier. And so I'm very proud of them, both in the district and up in the Capitol, helping me with the legislative package. As far as reaching out, obviously people can always email, they can call. As far as the campaign sign, if we want to go there, if they want to reach out and ask about signs or just how they can help, they can go to JUAN ALANIS for assembly at gmail.com, and they can get all the answers they want from there. Somebody will definitely be reaching out to them. I'm honored to be serving everybody in District 22. I am very happy that we went up to the Capitol. It's one thing to get bills passed, but it's another thing to be able to kill bills that do terrible things for California. And I was able to do 3 of those, get 3 bills in 1 week as a freshman. But it did help to have my background that I have. You'll find that a lot of people up there maybe not have the background that you would expect, but it obviously has helped me with my background up there, and I'm very happy to be there. My wife and I are empty nesters, so I can spend a lot of time up in Sacramento and not have to worry about missing a water polo game or a baseball game or a basketball game, football game, all those. I can actually concentrate on Sacramento, and I think that's a big tribute to why we got so many bills signed by the governor that we did. And I plan on continuing to do that for the next 10 years, as long as the people of District 22 want me to continue serving them. If they're not happy with me and they don't want to, then hey, I retired last year, so I will spend time with my grandkids and mow the lawn. But until then, I will continue to fight for them in Sacramento. And I thank you for having me on this show today.
Well, we appreciate you too, and we appreciate the work you have done. We look forward to you doing more, and hopefully that people who listen and watch this show, they're as happy as I personally am. And uh, it just so happens that we have a lot of agreement between at least you and I. And I'm hopeful that many members of the audience who are agriculturalists in your district, they're working in the farms, they're owning the farms, and they're impacted by most of the stuff that we talked, if anything, particularly water. There's a lot of small business owners, and you've met them, convenience stores, gas stations. So they're all up for it, and they're all raising their arms up in support of 36. So you're one of them. And I personally wish you the best. And we hope to talk to you again come November when you're back in session, and we can talk about more what you're going to be able to do for the district and people of California. So wish you the best. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. It just sort of something unique because you're out in the open there and you got the beauty of California behind you. I'm in England, which is for the first time me doing a show, recording it from England. I'm visiting with family, so it's unique for me. But enough on that. Thank you for your time, and I look
Thank you.
forward to having a discussion with you come January. So all the best.
Safe travels home. Thank you.
Thank you. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਸੀ ਵਨ ਇਹ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਅਸੈਂਬਲੀ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟ 22 ਦੇ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਪ 36 ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਮਾਲ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਔਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਦੇ ਐਡਰੈਸ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਲਾਹ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਵੋਟ ਪਾਉਣੀ ਹੈ ਯੈਸ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਪ੍ਰੋਪ 36 ਆਪਾਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਮਾਲ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸਿਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਲਿਕਰ ਸਟੋਰ ਹੈ ਗੈਸ ਸਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਕਨਵੀਨੀਅੰਸ ਸਟੋਰ ਹੈ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਛੋਟੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰੋਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ 36 ਆਪਣੀ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰੇਗਾ ਆਪਣੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰੇਗਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਲੁੱਟ ਮਾਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਜ਼ਾ ਦਾ ਮੌਕਾ ਮਿਲੇਗਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਰਿਪੀਟ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਉਹਦਾ ਹੱਲ ਹੋਊਗਾ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਆ ਅਗਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਦੇਵੋ ਸਾਂਝੀ ਸੋਚ ਟੀਵੀ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਮੈਂ ਇੰਦਰਜੀਤ ਕਾਲੀਰਾਏ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ